What's up, guys? Today on Dirt Lifestyle, we're going to do a full 4x4 alignment. If you have a vehicle that is out of alignment, it can do some really strange things on and off road. And if you have adjustable control arms, this video is for you. This will show you how to adjust your control arms in a way that it will locate your axles and make sure that you're driving straight down the road. Getting the correct alignment is easy with the right tools. What you're going to see today is a system that I came up with that I use on every build that I put together. I'm not sure if it's the best way to do this, but it's the best way that I've found so far. These are the tools we're going to use today. We've got a digital angle finder, inexpensive, off Amazon. I'll link all this stuff into an Amazon shopping cart in the description, so if you guys are interested in these tools, click on the link and it'll take you to a cart that'll have them all. This is a dot laser, this is a line laser, this is a plumb bob. We're not going to be using this today, but this is an alternative method if you don't want to spend money on the other stuff. You can get a certain degree of accuracy out of using a plumb bob, and I did that for years, but I highly recommend investing in lasers. It is so much easier, it is more precise. I think that is the move here. This is a chalk line. We're going to make some marks on the floor, so I use a chalk line, and then whatever you want to write with and whatever you're comfortable with. The methods I'm going to show you today could be used on pretty much any 4x4, but I'm specifically making this video for those of you that are like me and you have adjustable suspension. Most people these days do. If you don't have adjustable or tunable suspension, I highly recommend making the upgrade. It's a really good investment because you can fine-tune your ride characteristics and make sure that everything is going straight down the road. The first thing that I like to do is get the front axle mounted horizontally in the vehicle. It's really easy to make it forward one way or back one way on one side versus the other, and that'll make it crab walk going down the street, get you some really weird driving characteristics, including death wobble. So we want to make sure that this is squared away and then we move on to the next step. The way that I do that is with a line laser. So this laser, when you turn it on, makes a straight up and down line that'll go vertical. It also does a horizontal line, but we don't need that for this purpose. It auto levels as long as you get it close. You can hear it clinking around in there. That's because it's like basically suspended so it can auto level. We're gonna set this down on the ground. I like to line it up with this hole right here. Let's see, boom. We're center of that hole. Now, the way that I like to do this is I make sure that this line is going through the center of the hole on the other side. It's kind of difficult. It takes a little bit of time to get everything set up right. But what I want to have is one line that goes through both of these holes on the TJ frame. You can do this in a bunch of different ways. If you have other vehicles, find a bolt that is in the exact same place for like a body mount on both sides of your chassis, or you can use a bumper bolt that's in the exact same location off the front of your chassis. And in either case, you can use that as a way to make a straight line so you have something to measure off of from your axle to that line. So what we're using is this hole in the frame because I know it's in the exact same spot on both sides. And now I just basically need to jump back and forth and try and center this laser up in the hole for each side of the chassis. So I can tell that we are really close on this side. Woo, there's the laser for you guys. Let's see here. We're gonna point this up. Yes, we are extremely close. I might have nailed that on my first shot. Yeah, I'm looking at that. That is like perfect. That is perfect center of the hole. So now all I need to do is take a tape measure. I push off of the back of the axle tube on both sides, and then the laser makes a line right onto my tape measure. Couldn't be easier than that. So we are at 13 and just over 3/8. The line is just barely on the other side of 13 3/8, and so I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. I'm gonna make the line exactly 13 3/8, just barely on the other side of the line. So this is real easy. I'm just gonna pull off of the side here, turn my tape measure towards the laser, and we are perfect. I mean, that is money. I've already lined this axle whenever I put it in, so we're not adjusting anything today. I'm just showing you the techniques. If you need to adjust your control arms, it's extremely simple. You just loosen up your jam nuts on the end and then you spin them in order to lengthen the control arm or shrink the control arm. If you have a bushing on one side and you have an adjustable rod end on the other, then you're gonna have to take the bolt out. You're gonna have to take the control arm off, not all the way off, but one side off, spin it in or out in order to lengthen it or shrink it. It's super simple. Now, a lot of people will just measure a control arm on one side, make it match on the other. You would be extremely lucky if that worked. The odds of your mounts on both sides being identical is slim. Even factory mounts can be off just a little bit, which is why they make, in the factory application, those adjustable bolts that have that weird washer around it, because not everything is perfect from the chassis. You need a way to adjust that discrepancy out, and that's what we're doing here. So don't worry about what the lengths of the control arms are. That is completely irrelevant. What matters is where your axle is as opposed to where your chassis is. We're trying to square this axle up as close as we can absolutely get it with the chassis in order to make sure that this has no death wobble and it drives straight as an arrow down the road. The next thing we want to do is center the axle with the chassis. So its measurement from right to left is perfectly center with your vehicle itself. Now what I'm going to do for this is we are going to measure from one frame edge to the other. I built this bumper. I know that the sides of this bumper are perfectly in line with the frame, so I'm just gonna measure off the bumper. If you have a goofy bumper, you might have to pull it off and then measure basically from the outside of the frame rail to the outside of the frame rail, just because we need to get a center mark. Right now we are at 33 3/4. Half of 33 3/4 would be 16 7/8, I believe. Yeah, 16 is 32. 7/8 and 7/8 is 1 3/4. So yeah, we need to be at 16 7/8. So I'm gonna make a mark at 16 7/8 right here. And then I'm gonna get my dot laser and I'm gonna make a mark on the floor with the dot laser. So I'm gonna line up the dot with my mark. Okay, and on the bottom side of the dot laser, there is a dot that goes right onto the floor. So I'm just going to take my pencil, I'm gonna measure or mark where that dot is on the floor, then we're gonna do the same thing on the back of the chassis. On the back of the chassis, it's the exact same program that we just did. I'm gonna measure from one side to the other. The way I built this rear bumper, it makes it to where I'm literally at the edge of this frame, this rear cross member again, and I'm just going to go from edge to edge, mark a center, and then transfer that mark to the floor. Now I'm going to use the chalk line and something heavy. In this case, I'm going to be using an old battery, and this is just so I can hold one side of the chalk line, draw the chalk line out, line it up on both X's, and snap a line. Clearly, this is something that's easier with two people, but I make do with what I got, and right now I got just me. Now we're going to snap our chalk line, and we have a perfect line that is going from the front of the chassis all the way to the back of the chassis, and it is dead center of the vehicle. This is going to be handy for measuring a couple different measurements that we're going to take throughout this process. Now you need to find and mark the center of the axle, and once you find that, you're going to turn on your laser, and we're going to line this laser up with this line we have on the floor and make it be like perfectly center all the way down this chalk line on the floor. And now we have a really accurate measurement of where we need this axle to end up. I did all this work whenever I built the Jeep, so I know that everything is centered, so I'm not gonna take you through the entire process, but basically all you need to do is find a center mark on your axle. So you need to measure from common points on both sides of the axle. It's much easier to do when you're building everything and you don't have your cover on, maybe you don't have your gears in, because then you can just pull from the inside of the inner C on one side and measure to the inside of the inner C on the other side, and then boom, you have a center mark. But just find something that is common on both sides, whether it's measuring the center of both of your lower ball joints or the outside of the nut on one or the outside of whatever you need to do, you split that in half and then you mark a center mark on your axle. And once you get your center mark marked on your axle, you know how to adjust your suspension. Most of us will have a track bar in the front or a panhard bar, and that is what you're gonna use to make this adjustment. It's super simple. So you're gonna shrink it if you need it to go driver's side, and you're gonna expand it if you need it to go passenger side. Once you get this thing centered in the axle, I would recommend going back to the first step and making sure that the axle is still mounted horizontally and that your control arms didn't swing it too much one way or another and get it to where it's no longer horizontally mounted. Now, if you have long control arms, it's way more forgiving and it's way harder to detect a small change like that, but that's one of the advantages of having longer control arms, is there's more forgiveness in these measurements. Next thing you're gonna straighten out is your steering wheel. You're gonna get your steering wheel straight, and then you're gonna go underneath. Most of you guys, I'm sure, know how to straighten out a steering wheel, but I'll just give you the brief rundown for those of you who don't. This is your pitman arm. This comes off the steering box. You are going to shrink or expand the distance between that pitman arm and where it mounts here. I have a high steer setup, so this mounts on top of the knuckle over here. You might have a steering setup that mounts here. It doesn't matter. All you're gonna do is you're going to shrink or expand that drag link in order to straighten out your steering wheel and get your wheels straight running down the side of your chassis. As you guys just saw, I put a straight edge on the rotor on each side, and there's a reason for that. We're about to adjust toe. For those of you who are still hung up on how to get a straight steering wheel, having a straight edge on one side will make that easier, and having a line laser will make that easier. Like I said at the beginning of the video, make an investment, buy one of these line lasers. They are awesome. So if I measure from the front of our straight edge across our line, that line is gonna cast, or that laser is gonna cast a line right onto our tape measure for us. I can do this by myself. I don't have to have anybody hold a plumb bob, nothing crazy. And then I'm gonna pull a measurement off the backside, and all I'm gonna try and do is get the measurement the exact same from front to back off of that line laser. Super simple. Now I can adjust the steering wheel, make it super straight, and this is gonna get you very close to a perfectly straight steering wheel. It's gonna be hard to get it closer than this, other than just driving and making a micro adjustment. So this is a great way to set yourself up for measuring for toe. So this side will remain straight, and all we need to do is go from one side to the other. We're gonna measure from the straight edge on that side to the straight edge on this side. I'm at 62 and just under 3/8, actually 62, yeah, 62 and just under 3/8. And then I'm gonna measure on the back side, and if it was 62 and just under 3/8 in the back, that means that we're at 0 toe. The wheels are completely straight going down the road. The general consensus is that you want to have a little bit of positive toe. There's a couple ways to do this. You can make it perfectly straight and then just, you know, turn in one heim joint in order to shrink your drag link, no, excuse me, your tie rod, in order to shrink your tie rod a little bit, give you a little bit of positive toe. I have had it adjusted to just a hair of negative toe for miles and miles and miles, just a hair of positive toe and 0 toe. And I've experimented with this over many years. I have never been able to tell the difference. It hasn't worn my tires funny. It hasn't ran all over the road, no death wobble, nothing like that. So it's up to you how you adjust it. Like I said, the general consensus is a little bit of positive toe, and the easiest way to do that would probably be that front measurement, make it about a 1/16 of an inch smaller than that rear measurement, and you should be good to go. You should be more than happy with the toe. If you have any kind of weird drivability issues, it's very likely not toe if you have it adjusted in this manner, so this is how I would recommend doing it. Now that everything else is aligned, we are ready to make what I think is the most important measurement of all of these. They're all extremely important, don't get me wrong, but caster is so important to combat death wobble. My opinion is that 99% of death wobble is caster related. A lot of people will tell me, oh, I fixed, you know, I did a steering stabilizer, my death wobble went away, or whatever. That's just like putting a Band-Aid on it and like masking the symptom. Caster is so responsible for most death wobble. All death wobble that I've seen in person has been caster related. And it's because if you have this upper ball joint in front of the lower ball joint and you're going down the road, when you try to turn, you're basically like flopping your tires from side to side. There's a lot of reasons that caster is really important. To me, the magic measurement would be somewhere between 6 and 8 degrees of caster, meaning that this upper ball joint is behind the lower ball joint 6 to 8 degrees, but there are OEM specifications that encourage you to do like 4 degrees. I think most people in the off-road community would agree 6 to 8 is a really good target, but if you want to go off OEM specs, by all means. Now, how to get this measurement is a little bit difficult, and that's why I like a little angle finder like these. I've also got, you know, the big, you know, old school non-battery operated angle finders, but they're kind of difficult for this kind of thing. I don't want to get it off of a steering component. I don't want to get it off of the pinion. I want to get it off of the inner C. So there's a flat spot on the top of your inner C and there's a flat spot on the bottom of your inner C. And those are the two spots that I think are the most accurate. Now for this, I don't have a spot that I can set this without taking off this upper nut. I know that this doesn't have any issues going down the road, so I'm not gonna double check it. But there is a nut right here that if you have an older style axle like this, I'd recommend you just remove the nut. You should have enough of a flat spot that you can set this bad boy up and it'll give you the measurements that you're looking for. You can maybe use it on the bottom. This is gonna be different axle to axle. Modern axles are gonna have different flat spots than older axles, but in any case, I think that this is the best way to measure caster if you're not taking it to like a 4x4 alignment shop. Get yourself a $15 or $20 little digital jammy like this, and it'll get you really, really close in the ballpark. I've built some really complicated things with this, and this has never let me down. So that is what I recommend in terms of adjusting your caster. To adjust it, it's very simple. You just adjust your upper control arms. Since we set our horizontal measurement earlier, I don't want to mess that up. So I wouldn't touch the lower control arms. If you have a 4-link, I would remove one of your upper links and then adjust your caster with only one upper link. Then you take that 4th link, you're gonna adjust it to where you can effortlessly put the bolts back in the holes. You don't wanna have any tension between those upper links. If you have a 3-link like me, this is super easy. All I gotta do is loosen up a misalignment or a jam nut on the front and the back of the link, spin it, and then I can adjust it with one arm. Not a big deal. So this is how I recommend you adjust it. This is how I do it. I never have death wobble issues. I never have any weird drivability issues because I adjust everything within these specifications, and in my experience, they work great. If you're still hanging in there, that means that you are ready to see the rear axle alignment. This is super easy because we're only aligning 2 axes basically. I'm not getting into pinion angle today. That could be its own video. So we're not gonna really talk about pinion angle in this video. We're just gonna stick to alignment. We're gonna do the horizontal alignment first, just like we did on the front axle, and I'm gonna be choosing to use both lasers here. What I really want to relay to you guys is that you can be super creative as to where you get your measurements from, as long as they are the same on both sides. So you're measuring off of something that is true with the chassis. In this instance, I'm choosing to use this rear cross member because I know that it's true to the chassis all the way across. So I'm gonna use the line laser, or the dot laser first, and I'm going to put the dot right in between the rear bumper, which is what I call this, and the rear cross member. Then I'm gonna make a mark on the floor. And now I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. Now we're ready to use the line laser. And all we're gonna do is shoot the line across both of those X's that we just put on the floor. And we will have a sweet straight line that we can measure off of. As you can see, I've got this perfectly straight line that is in harmony with the chassis. It even casts a nice little green mark exactly where I would want it to be on the back of this rear cross member. So I would just pull a measurement from the back of the axle. It's gonna cast a line across the tape measure. I'm gonna do the same thing on both sides. I'm gonna make adjustments in order to make it squared up, and I'm good to go. Then we would go through and align the center. So let's do that right now. Centering the rear axle is just as simple as centering the front axle was. I need to find a center point for the axle. So in this case, I would measure from the inside of the rear drum here to the inside of the rear drum here, split that measurement in half, and then make a mark on the housing that would be the center line for the housing. Now all we need to do is make the center line of the housing reflect the line that's on the floor. So I'd use a line laser, run it all the way down this line that's on the floor. And right there, looks pretty damn good. So now that we have the line marked perfectly on the floor, we can see how it's casting a line up here. We need to make the center line of the housing match where this laser is, and so we would make micro adjustments in the control arms in order to shift the axle one way or another to make these two lines intersect. Now we're centered. After you do something like that, I would recommend going through and double checking your horizontal measurement to make sure that it's still true this way. You might have to go back and forth in order to adjust your control arms in a way that it is equally centered in both ways, but it's worth the work because then you're gonna be driving straight as an arrow down the road and you're done. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope that this video encourages you to go out and do your own alignment. Like the old saying goes, there is more than one way to skin a cat, so don't look at this as the end-all be-all as a method to do your own alignment. but this works great for me. It can work great for you. If you use your head, you figure out really common points to measure from, you use these tools, and it's really not that hard. If you've learned anything from any of my videos, you want to help support the channel, you can go to thedirtlifestyle.com. We have t-shirts, hats, we just got some patches, we have stickers, we have a whole bunch of different things like that. We also have a link to our Patreon account if you want to help support us in that way. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at DirtLifestyleNate. We'll see you next time.